Hey guys, welcome back to another video. In today's video, I'm going to be talking about Etsy and I'm going to be reviewing their first quarter earnings report for 2022. And I'm also going to be figuring out the intrinsic value of Etsy so we can figure out what a good buying price would be for Etsy from a value investing perspective. We can see that from the last 5 years, Etsy is currently up 716%. And at their all-time high near November 2021, they were up almost 3,000% over the 5-year period, which is pretty phenomenal. And since then, their share price has collapsed pretty substantially. We can see that over the last year, they're down about 42%, 35% over the last 3 months, and about 20% over the last month. So we're going to figure out if it currently presents a good buying opportunity at the current share price. So just for anyone who doesn't know what Etsy is, it's basically a marketplace for handcrafted goods, and it uses its platform to connect buyers and sellers all around the world. And they don't just have this Etsy platform, they also have Depop, which is a fashion resale marketplace. They have Reverb, which is a musical instrument marketplace, and they also have Elo7, which is a Brazil-based handmade goods marketplace. So they own and operate all of these different platforms to serve these different individual niche markets. And so right here we can see in the first quarter 2022 earnings report that they released that they reviewed some of their financials, year over year growth and things like that for 2022 as compared to 2021. And we can see right off the bat they have something here called GMS. This basically stands for gross merchandise sales or gross merchandise volume. And this is basically the dollar value of all of the items that have been sold in Etsy's marketplace for the first quarter of 2022. And so they're basically just saying here that there was about $3.2 billion worth of goods that were sold in the first quarter of 2022 as compared to the $3.1 billion in the first quarter of 2021. So that's year over year growth of about 3.5%, which is actually not that impressive because the actual Etsy marketplace GMS, it is actually down about 2% year over year to $2.8 billion. This is consolidated, so this includes all of their different platforms. But that being said, they're still up 177% compared to the first quarter of 2019. So that's pre-pandemic levels. And so since then, they've retained about 90% of the growth that they've experienced from their pre-pandemic levels. So it's a slowdown in growth from 2021, but it's still a lot of growth in comparison to the full operating history of their business, which is probably why we see their share price has tumbled over the last year, but it's still up a whopping 700% over the last 5 years. We also see right here that with revenue, their revenue is up 5.2% year over year to $579.3 million. And we can also see a pretty interesting statistic down here, their net income, which is down 40.1%. And that's a pretty substantial decrease from the first quarter of 2021. And that came primarily due to an increase in employee expenses. Their total employees increased to 71% year over year. And that came primarily also as a result of the acquisitions of the other platforms that they acquired for their business because they took on all of the employees who worked at those businesses as well. On top of that, they added 7 million new buyers to their Etsy platform in the first quarter of 2022, and their business is becoming a lot more international. In the first quarter of 2022, about 45% of their total gross merchandise volume came from non-US sales, which is an increase of about 5% year over year. And then lastly, if we scroll down a little bit later on, we'll be able to see in the cash flow statement that they repurchased about $63 million worth of shares, which is about 420,000 shares, give or take a couple hundred shares here and there. And so the first financial statement I'm going to look at is on page 7, which is the balance sheet. And this is basically just comparing the financial position for Etsy for the first quarter of 2022 compared to the last quarter of 2021. And we can see that their total assets have decreased slightly, primarily as a result of a decrease in a couple of line items like their cash and cash equivalents and also some depreciation of their property and equipment, as we can see right here. And then also we can see their total stockholders' equity has increased from 628 million to 676 million. And their total liabilities have also decreased mainly as a result of decreases in accounts payable and also accrued expenses. And if I scroll down here, we can see from their income statement, this is where we get a breakdown of why their net income decreased by 40%. And we can see it didn't come really from the cost of revenues. Even though it increased slightly, their revenues also increased. So even though their gross profit decreased slightly, it didn't account for as large of a decrease to their bottom line. That primarily came from their operating expenses. And we can see the large jumps from 53 million to 89 million, 52 million to 78 million. And that was why their total operating expenses almost increased by like $100 million. And then so their income from operations decreased pretty substantially, like almost 50% here. And then we can see their net income as a result decreased from about 143 million in the first quarter of 2021 to 86 million in the first quarter of 2022. And then lastly, we see right here their cash flow statement, and this is where we get into some of the investing and financing activities, including the repurchasing of shares that Etsy is experiencing right now as part of their share repurchasing program. And we can see right here their net cash provided by operating activities decreased from about 148 million to $59 million for the first quarter of 2021. And then also they didn't purchase nearly as many marketable securities in the first quarter of 2022 as they did in 2021. It's about 268 million in 2021, but only about 76 million in 2022. And then also we see right here the big discrepancy from 2021 to 2022, where they didn't really repurchase any stock in 2021, but as a result of their new share repurchase program, they repurchased about $62 million worth of common stock in their company, which is probably going to contribute to more value for their shareholders. And obviously, I mean, there are some advantages to buying back shares as opposed to just giving this money back to shareholders in the form of dividends. The main reason being, I mean, they save money on taxes, a lot of money on taxes, because they aren't getting taxed twice. They're only getting taxed once if they repurchase shares. And then from there, we see that the change in cash was a decrease of about $23 million from their last quarter. And now I want to look at the intrinsic value of Etsy to figure out if at the current share price of about $92 per share, if it currently presents a good buying opportunity. And we can see that from this discounted cash flow analysis that I did, I took some of these metrics from Yahoo Finance. They are basically estimating that Etsy is going to grow at about 41.95% compounded annually for the first 5 years from today. And so for the next 5 years after that, I was conservative, and then I just cut the value for the first 5 years in half to 20%. And we can see after taking into account the cash flow for 2021, the cash currently sitting on their balance sheet minus their net debt and the amount of shares outstanding in their company, we can see that the intrinsic value per share is estimated to be about $300 per share with a 30% margin of safety of $214 and a 50% margin of safety of $152, which compared to their current share price means that Etsy might be presenting a really strong buying opportunity at their current share price of about $92 per share. They have a market cap right now of about $11.71 billion, and they're trading at 30 times earnings. So that being said, they, according to these financial metrics, could be presenting a strong buying opportunity. And on top of that, I did a competitor analysis over here so we can see where they rank up in their industry. We can see that compared to their two main competitors, Shopify and Squarespace, we can see that Squarespace has Etsy and Shopify beaten in the gross profit margin, but their business is not yet profitable, so they don't really have a return on their assets or a net profit margin. For Shopify, although this metric says 63.20% for their net profit margin, this value is actually also taking into consideration some unrealized gains and realized gains from their increase in equitable securities. And so if we were to take that away, this value would actually say something closer to 5% with a return on assets of 27%. So compared to Shopify, it seems like Etsy is beating them in gross profit margin. And then if we weren't to take into consideration the net unrealized and realized gains from their equitable securities, then Etsy would also be beating them in net profit margin, but not in return on assets. So it seems like Shopify is using their assets more efficiently to get a return on their business. But overall, it seems like Etsy is pretty competitive, and considering that their business is also expanding, becoming more international, and they're also starting to repurchase shares, and their share price has tumbled pretty substantially from their all-time highs in November of 2021. Definitely easy to see how Etsy could at the moment present a good buying opportunity potentially. But I'd love to know what everyone watching this video thinks. If they're going to be investing in Etsy anytime soon, definitely let me know. Subscribe to the channel, leave a like on this video, and I'll see everyone in the next one.